Welcome to this discussion about prayer. If you're like me, you may have come from something that was somewhat dogmatic, whether it was specifically organized religion or if it's just the culture of dogma. You know, you don't actually have to have been in, say, evangelical Christianity to be conditioned by some of the concepts. And that is because what is the dogmatic leavings of religion are pervasive throughout society, because the dogmatic leavings, that overlay of whatever religion it may have been, really are hand in hand with the egoic social conditioning. And so it really doesn't make any difference if you came from some kind of church or temple and the people who were the powers that be said that it is sinful to be a sexual being in any form. Well, guess what? Even if you weren't in a specific religion, people got that same conditioning from their peers and from their parents and other social groups. They got that same kind of conditioning. I mean, slut shaming, right? What's that all about? That's just an example of how conditioning is pervasive, regardless of the avenue you receive it. And the reason I set it up that way is because prayer, the word prayer, tends to be associated with religion. Now, we don't have that many words. So if we want to create a brand new word for this concept so that we can bring it away from the connotations that tie it to something that is dogmatic, well, then let's. But then we have to teach the whole world it, or at least the whole English speakers, the whole world of English speakers, or whatever language that you speak. We're speaking English right now. And that's just not very efficient, is it? Better yet than to try to continue to create endless words, let's just reclaim it. Let's just redeem it. And so that's what I intend to do today, is to reclaim and redeem prayer. It doesn't only have to be reclaimed from dogmatic religion either. It needs to be reclaimed and redeemed from, like I say, secular kind of social conditioning. Secular social conditioning will tell us that prayer is not a part of the life of someone who is not using crutch. It's not part of the life of someone who is pragmatic. It's not a part of the life of someone who is grounded and realistic, scientific, or something along those lines. Anything, this other kind of, quite frankly, other kind of dogma. You know that science and a pragmatic way of thinking is just a new religion. It's not as organized as, say, the Catholic Church or some other kind of denomination of specific religions, but it's not disorganized either. I actually spoke last week about how we are conditioned that it seems to be more noble to be pessimistic, that is the mark of someone who is smarter than everyone else. It is the mark of someone who doesn't have their head in the clouds. It's the mark of someone who is figuring things out. Well, likewise, prayer is, by the egoic kind of worldly conditioning, prayer is cast aside as something that is for the weak, for the religious, for the mystical, esoteric, woo-woo even, and then there's this other kind of middle group of maybe say as New Age or New Thought. It used to be called New Thought or New Age religion, and New Age spirituality that also is casting off the idea or the practice of prayer because of responding to the church and responding to dogma. So all of this is to say, I am claiming it from all of those sources that are calling it something that is useless. And so let's talk about what prayer is. Prayer, as we just did a moment ago, it can be actually many things. So what we just did a moment ago, in that we actually were shifting our energy. We were having a conversation at the same, I don't know if you could feel that, but basically I would offer a statement and then we would wait. And then we would feel ourselves aligned to it. And then as I was the one who was leading it, I was waiting and we aligned to it. And then I was listening for the next kind of offering, the next offering from me, or the next statement that we would desire to ascend to, basically. So this is, like I say, this is an exchange. So I'm offering something and source energy or the guides or whatever, offering it back. As I offer the words and the thought and the energies behind it, our hearts are adjusting to them. So it is a give and take. It is an exchange, just like a conversation. And this conversation helps us to identify higher and higher into a higher, so I should say, higher and higher vibrational tuning. And so we're more identifying to source energy in this conversation. Just like if you were in a conversation and you were trying to persuade someone, a persuasive conversation. Well, change my mind about something, you might say to someone. Will you change my mind about this? Convince me. Explain to me what is going on with this or what's happening with this. Tell me what's going on. And then you listen and you say, oh, okay. And maybe you ask a question, or you allow yourself to say, well, then maybe this means this as well. And the person says yes. And so we're exchanging. And in the meantime, you're being persuaded and you're identifying, you're moving your perspective over to this new perspective or this different perspective. So again, prayer can be a conversation in which you are allowing your energy to better attune to source energy. Prayer doesn't need to be spoken aloud. This is another thing that we want to notice, because the word prayer in some religious thought is basically an organized, ritualized speech that you say. You even hear in some vernacular or languages where you would say a prayer. You know what I mean? Say a prayer for me. And not that there's anything wrong. We did just say a prayer. We spoke it. But it doesn't need to be spoken. The spoken words actually just help us to focus the energy. There are tools. The words are just signposts, but they aren't the thing. They aren't the real, they aren't the workhorse of what's happening. They aren't the energy. They are signposts about the energy. They are, like I say, just the tools. So prayer doesn't need to be spoken. It can be spoken, but it can be said in the heart. Now, there are plenty of religions or organized faiths that pray, and, it's a silent thing. But just to make a note of the fact that a prayer isn't a kind of just magic wand with nothing behind it, or a spell, or a speech with nothing underneath it. Prayer can be spoken aloud, obviously, and prayer can be organized. Prayer can be something that is sort of like a speech that is charged up with a lot of energy, because it has been poured over and it has been loved and it has been felt more deeply into. Again, the words are still only signposts, but the words can be there. And if you approach them afresh again, then you're going to charge them up even more, feel more deeply into what those words could represent. And sometimes those words expand so much, so they cue you to expand in your energy and your consciousness, that you're like, I don't even know if what I'm feeling has to do with what I used to think those words meant. And that's great. That's okay. And so prayers that you may find that are sort of old-fashioned prayers, or ones that are in some sacred text, or ones that have been created out of a particular religious faith, they can be really lovely and really charged up because of basically the thought form energy that has been contributed to them time and again. And I'm going to get to a really powerful example of this. But in order for it to be a prayer that makes any kind of difference, that does anything, it would always be that the energy, the feeling, and the focus around the words are just signposts. The words aren't the journey themselves. So what prayer is not? Prayer is not a supplication. Supplication means like begging. the reason I say, I mean, I guess you could say it is, but it's not dynamic. It's not affirmative. It's not powerful prayer. If we're begging, what begging is identifying with that you don't have. It's identifying with lack. So if I'm begging God, please, may I have this thing. The energy of that is, I don't have this thing. And the energy is literal. The universe is literal. So the frequency that we emit is that which we bring to us. It's what we magnetize to us. So if I'm emitting a frequency of lack, then I just create lack. I create the absence of the thing for which I'm begging, because I identify with powerlessness. It's a disempowered kind of identification, rather than affirming, feeling into the experience of having and knowing that God, or your God essence, can and shall create it if you just align your feeling state to it, if you align your frequency to it. That's what actually creates. That's what creates worlds. That's what has created absolutely everything in your experience now, and it is what is creating your experience tomorrow. So dynamic prayer, or prayer that is effective and affirming, creative, is not one of supplication, is not one of begging. It is one that is persuasive on both ends. We open our hearts to be persuaded to source energy, and then we ask for it, and then we allow it. We ask and we allow. And that's when I ended the prayer a moment ago at the beginning of this. I said that when we knock, we know the door is opened. See, the door is opened when we knock, when we're sure that it will. But if we're begging for the door to open, we're not really knocking. We're not really asking for it to be opened. We are affirming that it's closed when we're in that supplicative kind of attitude. For example, when I say that there are some prayers that perhaps you actually prepare or someone else has prepared and they actually work really well, that is, like I was saying, thought, that it's charged up with thought form energy. And so I said that really quickly, just in case you aren't familiar with what thought form is. Thought form is when we actually concentrate thoughts upon a particular focus, and then it starts to take something that is like form. So basically, everything really is a thought form. Like, in order to create this, there had to be a lot of thought in order to manifest it, So when that's generally speaking, everything is a thought form. It's a form of thought. It is, the non-physical precedes the physical. But thought form, when that is used, we're talking about something that hasn't quite become dense enough to be fully third dimensional or something along those lines. But it is more dense than a singular thought, than a singular energy, or a passing. So basically, if you look at the way that energy works, the binary nature of energy, of waves and particles, waves is this very expanded form of energy. So that would be just like one thought, one emotion. But if we kept having that thought and emotion, then it actually starts to collapse and it becomes more dense. It's sort of like putting on different layers of paint so that the color becomes richer. You know what I mean? More intense. Well, that's what a thought form is, when it's starting to become really focused, and then it becomes something more than just the really expanded thought. It becomes more dense, it becomes more concentrated, more focused. And so that's what happens when we continue to feel and dynamically think about the words of a prayer. It becomes really charged up. It is sort of like a spell, but in a real sense. I think that people think that a spell is something that you just say, and that the words themselves are magical. No, what's magical is the creator energy underneath it. Without that feeling underneath it, without the real charged up thought about the words that would be spoken or even thought in the mind when we're praying, then we are just noise. It's just noise. Even if it's in the mind, then it's unfocused and it's just noisy, and it's disorganized energy. So when it's disorganized in that manner, then we may be we may be dwelling upon limiting beliefs as well as the beliefs that we want to, that are the creative beliefs or the creative thought energy. So the point of it is very much like, and the distinction between, and the point of it is like meditation. And like I said, the distinction is actually, in meditation, we typically are being rather than having a conversation. We may be journeying and being taken into different dimensions and different experiences, but that is more of an experience rather than a conversation. So more like being on a roller coaster than to actually being in a persuasive conversation. And meditation is also the time that we actually put down the tool of the mind so that we can have thoughtless space and recognize the eternal nature of the being, making contact with the inner being or with source energy. Contact as opposed to connection and exchanging and attuning oneself through a prayerful conversation. So another thing that, as I said, I think that we want to reclaim prayer, not only from religion, not only from new thought that is rejecting it, but also from the social conditioning, kind of worldly conditioning. And something that I've noticed that is happening with prayer and the idea of prayer that's kind of new. Have you guys seen people making fun of making these different memes and talking about how thoughts and prayers is like a dumb thing to say and it's not helpful? And people are you know, they're like, oh, there's someone drowning, thoughts and prayers, and they're like making fun of it. Now, I understand the joke. I understand what the kind of, I'll be honest, the thing that they're saying is a bit holier than thou, and it's a bit judgmental oriented when they're saying, hey, you're not doing anything. When you say thoughts and prayers, that doesn't really help anyone. And see, that's where I have a problem with it, because if you really are praying for someone, that, and in an affirmative way, in a dynamic way, well, that's energy that you are sending, healing energy that you are sending, and that can create the thought form effect of healing them. I'll also tell you that personally, I can testify that prayer works. I mean, of course, there are studies that show that people that were prayed for were healed, and people that weren't prayed for, not as much or whatever. I mean, there were actually different kinds of studies and observations of that. But personally, I can tell you that prayer does work. It supports, it heals. Energy is real. So when someone sends belief energy, real energy about I believe in your light expands. That's true. That just happens. And all I have to do is agree to it, of course, because we have free will. But when you place your energy upon my light, when you place your focus upon my light, this is also, there's science behind this too. Quantum physics shows us that when we place an awareness upon something, it changes, it expands, it responds, it reacts. So I ask for prayers and I hold my heart open to that support, and you bring that energy to me, you send it to me, then it changes. You focus your energy, you focus your awareness upon the thing that I want to uplift and change, and it does. That again, science, y'all. So I think there's a bit of an insidious kind of danger there in how there's this new trend about making fun of the phrase thoughts and prayers. I also think I don't think it's very kind, because a lot of people that see something on social media, we're seeing one another's, stuff all the time. And it's a good thing. It can be a good thing. Obviously, we can use it however we like. But if someone is in some kind of situation and they express it on social media, and if there's the person sending thoughts and prayers or prayers, it is a real kind of help. So maybe they need $1 million to bail them out of some situation. I don't have $1 million. I can't even prioritize it, or I choose not to prioritize it. It wouldn't be logical or an even energetic exchange for me to prioritize finding $1 million for someone that I went to junior high with, when perhaps if I were to manifest that, it makes more sense that I actually manifest it for someone else who's closer to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how things are organized in this reality. So thoughts and prayers, or prayers, actually do support them. And when someone is making fun of that, saying, well, you're not really helping, that's A, I disagree with that. But B, saying that it's another kind of, very cynical thing. It's a stupid thing to say. Smart people don't say that. Smart people take action. That is action. And it's also robbing us from the experience to support someone. The next time you are in some kind of compromised or painful situation and someone lends their heart to you and sends you that love, how dare someone else say that people shouldn't be doing that because it's not the smart or clever or cute thing to do, and that action is the only thing that actually matters? I disagree. I declare that prayer is action that does work and does help. And thoughts and support and calls and, all of that, of course. But if I don't have my junior high, or my 5th grade friend's phone number, nor does she really need me to be calling her, but she is reaching out on Facebook or whatever, she does receive the support in the way that is appropriate for that relationship. And it's really wonderful that we have all of these different ways that we can support one another. And so truly praying when someone needs it is truly impactful. And so I say, there is a war on prayer. And I get a little scared when I say that, because don't I sound like some kind of weird right-wing Republican who's trying to say that his religion should be taught in the schools? It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking about your personal practice of it. Your practice of dynamic and affirmative prayer that makes your life better. And the ways that you can actually help others by focusing your awareness through something like prayer upon their light and upon their wellness and healing and vitality. It works, you guys. It really, truly does. And so, in order to reclaim prayer from kind of the source that probably is most sensitive for most of us, I'm actually going to review the Lord's Prayer. And I'm actually going to review it in that kind of King James language, which that language, straight way back when I was a kid, I was like, when someone would stand up and pray and they would say, "Dear God, we thank thee for this." And I was like, why is it holier to say thee? That doesn't make any sense. God's not Elizabethan. So, you know what I mean? Like, I questioned things like that when I was very, very young. But I'm going to just look at it in that language because I actually have it memorized best in that vernacular of Elizabethan, the King James language. But it is it's a really cool thing to look at. Like I said, this prayer has been prayed by many a heart that were open and faithful. And so there's definitely thought form energy charged into this if we choose to align ourselves with just that positive, with just that creator side of it. But I actually looked at it today and broke it down and saw how it has really powerful, energetic, universal wisdom to it, which is probably why Jesus said, and when you pray, pray like this. Whether he said it exactly like this or not, it doesn't matter. There is something that survived from it that has, as a person who studies metaphysical philosophy, has some really strong spiritual truth to it. And so let's look at it, if you will indulge me. And I think it's really good if you do have a reaction to it, write it out and go ahead and just, you know what I mean? Like when we have a reaction to something, that's our inner being saying, hey, this is something to heal. This is something to move past. So let's do it. All right. Okay. Let's start with our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So right away, we're like, God's not a guy. Sure, right. But what if we just take out the vernacular, we take out anything that is limiting? What I see here, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. What this is that tuning to source energy, tuning to creator energy, the energy of I am even. And the energy of I am, the identity of I am, it's yours. It is you as source energy. It is the version of you. It is the you inside, the truth of you who is I am. I am is eternal. I am is the highest truth. It is the highest kind of identity. So we're just saying, I am. When we say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy name, even as it says, and if we even reference this same text, in the Old Testament, God said, I am that I am. And so that is creator energy. That's the name, or the identity, better said, of source energy. I am. So we can erase all of the other words. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And we just say, I am. I am that I am. We identify with our eternal nature, with the God essence. The next line, thy kingdom come. This one's interesting because it's not even a way that we even speak today. Thy kingdom come. So your kingdom come. Now, I feel into that and I try to release all of the sort of old energy about it, whether it's the old English or it's how it was colored from people who told me how to think and feel, instead of telling me I should think and feel what is the truth of me. And so thy kingdom come to me speaks to ascension. And we are ascending, aren't we? Individually, globally, universally. We actually are the expression of ascension or expansion. You know, source energy thought to experience itself and created duality. And we are, one of the things that I think is really accurate about the Old Testament or the sacred text that says we are created in the energy, we are created in the image of source. So we are an image of source energy. We are a piece of source energy. We are creator energy and we are creators. That's the I am again. So ascension, just by the fact that we are, means thy kingdom come, means we are ascending, we are expanding, because we are the expansion of source energy. So that's what thy kingdom come means to me. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This reminds me very much of the Hermetic expression, as above, so below. And this is a reminder that there isn't anything that is actually esoteric. Esoteric meaning out of reach or for the secret or something that can't be grasped. It's actually everything that is above, or above representing that source energy experience or spirituality or the spirit realm, is here. There is no separation and there is no real distinction of it. Additionally, it tells me that this experience of being physical and incarnated is spiritual. It isn't contrary to being spiritual. It isn't contrary to the spiritual experience or the spirit realm or all of that kind of stuff that we're interested in when we're in certain kinds of spiritual communities. This experience, this grounded experience of being physical, is what you chose from your higher self. Your higher self dispatched you into an incarnated experience. So, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven means that thy will is actually the collective God consciousness. We all are the all. So thy will, who's the thy, who is that? That is the will of the all, the highest good for everyone. And it is done on earth below as it is in heaven, as above. Give us this day our daily bread. This is a beautiful reminder of the fact that because we are abundant. Everything, because we are successful. Because we are well. And we are not right now, right? Are you not alive? So that means that everything that you've ever done up to this point was successful. And what true abundance is having what you need when you need it. And so when we recognize that I ate today, that means I am abundant. I ate today and I exist today. I live today. Therefore, I am successful. And every decision that I made was successful and accurate. And therefore, I am a creator and a prosperous one at that. Give us this day and our daily bread. This day we are. Our daily bread, give us our daily bread, attunes us to Gaia energy, to Mother Earth. And you guys know I'm a Gaia gal, right? Attunes us to that, the fact that we are her beauty and we are her abundance and that we are always served, because our daily bread is, I'm actually gluten intolerant, but still, our daily bread has been given us today, and Gaia provided that to us, and our connection to her is actually serving us and allowing us to know, allowing us to express ourselves, to be the incarnated versions of ourselves, and to be grounded in that source energy expression. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Now, a reminder about what sin really is. Sin is this word that has been used to condition us to believe in punishment and to condition us to believe in judgment being something that is something that refines us. Judgment is something that makes us better. And judgment is something that everyone deserves. When interestingly, in the exact same text that people use to uphold that idea is the person who is the Messiah, who says that you judge not, lest ye be judged. That is just talking about the balance of nature, or the balance of energy, of the universal experience. We know that everything seeks balance in the universe and in nature. And then that is the nature of energy. Again, we talked about the frequency. So whatever frequency we activate, we magnetize to us. So judging is actually just disidentifying from the all. And it's actually it's believing in a lie. So what a sin really is, if sins aren't really about judgment and doing something wrong that should be punished, because there is no such thing as punishment, and there is no such thing as judgment in the universe. That is a higher universal law. That isn't actual truth, judgment. There is no judgment day. The only judgment that happens is that we discern and we look over our own experiences and our own choices in life to see how we want to grow from them and learn from them. So what a sin really is any spectrum of experiencing something that is not perfect love, or not the perfect identity with source energy. Basically, the dual experience. So sin can be anything on the spectrum, because you can also think of sin as being something that is so far from love that it's insanity. Or it can be just a moment where you are identifying as a separate being. And that again is a sacred journey from your higher self, or from source energy, to go out, to be dispatched, and for moments to focus on a singular experience. Abraham Hicks refers to this as contrasting experience. I like that. It's a very neutral way to think about it. So it is a contrast to love, perfect love, unconditional love. It is condition. So sin, really, we don't need to use that word. We have plenty of other words for sin, but just to redeem this text and understand what this kind of charged up prayer, what wisdom there is in it, rather than let's say we forgive ourselves for the contrast as we forgive others who are in contrast. Ooh, doesn't that make a little more sense if you listen to Abraham Hicks and you understand what the word contrast really means? And so it is tuning us to unity, because it actually is relieving us of judgment. It is helping us to rebuke judgment, because if I am forgiven for sin, I also forgive others of sin. And now we are all one again. So it's tuning us to unity here. Balance. It's affirming the law of attraction. It is it is helping us to be freed from, as if we were in shackles, we are freed from blame and judgment and regret, because we are coming into unity and recognizing that we're all a part of the all. And lead us not into temptation. Temptation to backslide into that blame, into doubt, into disidentifying from the all, disidentifying from the eternal nature. We ask that we continue to be reminded of that, and we stay in the higher perspective as we experience the focus of incarnation. We remember always the higher focus. We stay awake, basically, from the experience, and we stay above it in our awareness and our consciousness. That's where our anchor is, rather than to the temptation to be in doubt and fear, blame, lack, judgment, regret. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And the evil, again, oh, that word. We don't really need that word. We have plenty of other words. But let's say, deliver us, again, from identifying wholly with contrast. Allow us to be identified with the fact that we are creators and that everything is. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Well, that's, again, just tuning us to eternity, to eternal nature, to creator power, but it's also attuning us to dominion, to sovereignty. Because when we say, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever, we're a part of that thine. We are a part of the all. So when we identify to unity, to source energy, to our creator essence, to that high bliss state, we know that we have everything that we need, and we're identified to sovereignty because our God essence is activated. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. We're speaking to ourselves. For yours, for mine is the kingdom. For I have kingdom. I have the power. I am unconditional love forever and ever. Amen. Amen. And so amen literally means truth. That's the translation of it, truth. So it is basically in the same way that we end, and so it is. It is an affirmation. An affirmation, by the way, just to clear this up again to remind us, an affirmation isn't saying something as a spiritual bypassing mechanism to avoid really moving through true feelings. It isn't a false positivity. An affirmation means calling true, identifying to truth. That's what an affirmation is. And so we end with the affirmation, and so it is, or amen, which means truth. And now I align with truth. So when you look at that, it's a pretty good prayer. It's overall, another thing to just sum it all up, prayer, conversation, energy tuning, energy healing, energy attunement. It's also basically like a hypnosis. We are bringing our awareness into, we're freeing ourselves of the shackles of limiting beliefs. And it is an activation. So this is what prayer is. This is really what it is, more than a liturgical kind of supplication that is hollow and doesn't mean anything. It's also not a weak state of mind that those who are more intelligent shan't do. And it also isn't something that is in the hands of some person who tells you to place your authority outside of yourself and into their own hands, and to place the power of your mind into someone else's authority. It is none of those things. It is your sovereign right as a creator being. And I welcome you to practice it daily.